Do you know someone who's never listened to a podcast? It might sound bananas to you and me, but those people are out there. If we want the podcast industry to grow, we need to turn those non-podcast listeners into podcast listeners.
We think that if they just heard one podcast, one really, really good podcast that shows them how great podcasts can be to listen to, that they might convert. Then they will listen to another, and then another, and then another.
Think Media thinks so too. And this April, they are launching Adopt a Listener. Yes, that's right, Adopt a Listener. They're asking you to find someone who says, podcasts aren't my thing, and give them a thoughtful recommendation. Something that will get them hooked. Go to thinkmedia.co/adopt to sign up, find resources, and learn how you can get involved.
Crosswires is a proud supporter of Adopt a Listener. See the other participating shows at thinkmedia.co/adopt.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to Crosswires. It's James here, and this week we are going wireless. Hang on, we might already be wireless. Hold on a second. That makes no sense. All right, we are going wireless. We're going to be talking about the wonderful world of Wi-Fi, and we have a fantastic guest. But before, Jay, how are you doing?
I am doing awesome. I am here podcasting with my lovely co-host, and also for the first time podcasting with a good friend of the show. So I'm doing good. Though I also have to say one thing. Mm-hmm. I surprised you by the fact that I'm actually trying out SwiftKey again, powered by Big AI on my phone.
You do realize this isn't the AI episode, right? So you can make that confession later tonight.
I know.
Oh dear.
But no, I'm doing good, and I like having a day off today.
I love having every Friday off. I'm loving this new job. It's great.
Oh, shush you! But I want to give a huge congratulations to Alex and Jim for relaunching Charging Status, and I have it already queued up in my podcast app. I just didn't get a chance this morning to watch it. I was actually listening to a podcast about the chandelier falling on the final showing of Phantom of the Opera on Broadway. I was just very intrigued by that. So sorry, Alex. Phantom of the Opera took precedence in my podcast app today. But congratulations to you too, because I am so excited to see it continue. And I've been getting a lot of my EV news from you. So I'm getting very excited. I just want to say that it's really getting me charged up.
Oh, oh no.
But yes. So yeah, our guest today is Alex Lowe of The Interface. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on again. It's good to be back podcasting with Crosswires.
Is this your third Crossed Wires appearance, I think?
It is, I think. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Number 3. So yeah, congratulations on Charging Status. It is a little bit, I've got to be honest, it's a little bit weird hearing the show go on with someone else, even if he shares effectively the same first name. Like, it's just a bit surreal. But anyway, congratulations. So, Alex.
What? I just realized
what?
At the end of the episode, you could be like, it's the end, Jim.
Oh, no. Oh,
Star Trek reference.
No. It's a car, Jim, but not as we know it. All right. So, Alex, sorry, Alex, before we get into our discussion today, and look, this is going to be very much focused on kind of the technology itself, Wi-Fi itself. And is it fair to say, Alex, we are probably going to be talking, when we talk about maybe devices and application, we are probably going to be talking more on the home user side, because getting into business Wi-Fi in terms of placement and stuff is far more complicated. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, like hotel Wi-Fi, office Wi-Fi, it's a massive, completely different ballgame, really.
Yeah, so a whole different ball game. And look, there is great content out there, obviously by Alex himself for Hostify. Have you done Wi-Fi stuff on the interface as well?
Yeah, quite a while ago, I started doing Wi-Fi guides for Ubiquiti stuff. I've stopped doing it more recently because it does take a long time to produce. And of course, with Hostify now, so there's great YouTube stuff that we're doing and lots of guides. So
And without, sort of bringing up I wouldn't even say competition. I think we've discussed this so many times, but there's so much space. Like, is it okay we give a shout out to our friend Cody McCallum from Mac Telecom Networks and Tom Lawrence?
100%. Yeah, those two guys are doing some great work.
Oh, and Willie Howe as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and hang on, how can we? Sorry, so many great creators in the business Wi-Fi and particularly the Unify space. Of course, we should give a shout out to Chris Sherwood of Crosstalk Solutions.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I've learned so much from Chris. But we're going to be focusing on Wi-Fi itself. And Alex, I want to say this in the right way because it could come across as really rude. What gives you the expertise? Where's your grounding in understanding this Wi-Fi? What's your experience? Just so we can make sure our listeners feel comfortable with you.
Yeah, so I started my career in networking. My first job, God, how long ago was that now? Probably 8 years ago. So I used to work for a WISP. So for everyone that's not too familiar, it's a wireless internet service provider. So I'm not going to name who it was, but I work for probably one of the largest WISPs in the country. I started as an apprentice, it's such a good opportunity to start any job as an apprentice because you don't have to have all the qualifications. They'll teach you on the job and you can also earn money at the same time, which is amazing. I'm not sure if they have apprentices in the US. It's very much a thing that's been around for quite a while in the UK. But anyway, they taught me everything I know now, really, about wireless networking, because obviously the devices that you use to get the internet to your house, they all use the same Wi-Fi technology. We'll get to that in later in the show. But yeah, I fell in love with networking and Wi-Fi, and I've sort of taught myself quite a bit, so it's great fun.
Now, just because I find this technology interesting, is this the same idea of like, I know there are some like citywide Wi-Fi networks?
Well, similar.
Okay, because I know I think San Francisco in the United States has that, and I know my city of Columbus has some citywide internet as well that they've been starting to bring out, especially to get to places where you can't bring cables.
Yeah, definitely. Those are more of a mesh, maybe more of a mesh scenario.
Okay.
Yeah, the wireless internet provider stuff, as I said, we'll get into it a little bit later, but the underlying core technology of Wi-Fi, it's used in that scenario, but it's more long distance wireless cables essentially, which is how I like to reference it. But
I like that. All right, let's get into Wi-Fi itself now. First question I've got to ask, is this a myth? I know we've got some myths later on, but is it a myth that Wi-Fi actually stands for is an acronym for wireless fidelity?
Officially, the Wi-Fi Alliance haven't confirmed what it actually means. I've got no idea what it means, to be honest. I think it's just one of those things that just, it's a little word that means something. So yeah, I'm not sure what it means.
Okay, but I mean, that makes two of us. I'd heard wireless fidelity because that's what hi-fi means, high fidelity.
Right. So yeah,
I'd heard. But anyway,
and someone had said like wireless frequency is what I had been told at one point.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would be 5 for frequency, but that's what someone had told me.
Okay, well, I guess one day we might actually find out. So, Alex, let's kick in with a bit of a history of what we call Wi-Fi. So,
as I mentioned, the Wi-Fi Alliance, it was a lot of things in networking have a standards code. So, Wi-Fi or wireless uses 802.11 as its standards code. And then for each generation of Wi-Fi, so obviously it goes through evolution and they come up with ways to perfect it and different frequencies and that sort of thing. They have letters after each one. More recently, that's been very simplified. So you now have numbers as well. But the letters have changed. So last few years, Wi-Fi 6 has been very much a big thing. I mean, your UDR you've got at home has Wi-Fi 6, but the technical standard of that is 802.11ax. And it's only, as I said, it's only just recently started to simplify the naming of it. But it hasn't been around for that long. Like everything that we're used to nowadays, the internet itself and Wi-Fi, it's only 20 years, really. Just over 20 years. Yeah.
That makes sense because I remember hearing about that on like some of the early like tech TV about Wi-Fi and being like, whoa, you mean I don't have to have cables for my internet?
Yeah, definitely. The very first version of Wi-Fi was announced, was the year I was born, actually, 1997.
Oh, young man.
You both making me feel old today. All right, come on, just let's stay away from the old jokes, eh? All right.
Yeah, and really the company that sort of helped kickstart the popularity of Apple, really. So Apple used to do all these in-person keynotes before COVID, and there was a big one in the late 90s where they announced the iBook, and they had Phil Schiller who jumped off a stage with a laptop that was connected via Wi-Fi, and Steve Jobs had a hoop that went around it to prove there's no cables. And then they launched the airport as well, the airport Wi-Fi routers. So that was they give them some credit. They were the company that sort of helped popularize it and bring it to the mass market.
Didn't that first airport not only have an Ethernet input, it had a 56K modem in it?
Oh, wow.
I think so. I think you're right, yeah. I think it had a modem built in, yeah.
Yeah, because at that point, broadband was not as widespread, particularly in the States.
Yeah.
So the idea was that you could take a 56K dial-up modem and share that across your Apple-powered home network.
Yeah. Yeah, the very first version of Wi-Fi was really slow. So we're used to nowadays, we're talking pre-show about internet upgrades and the 100 megabits per second. The very first version of Wi-Fi did about 2 megabits per second. That was it.
Wow.
And it only ran on 2.4 gigahertz. So yeah, we've come a long way, really.
We really have. I mean, I guess it started to evolve from there. And, I remember, starting to see, people saying, oh, get a Wi-Fi card for your laptop. And for a long time, Wi-Fi was not something that was built into laptops. It was...
No.
It was something you added on extra. And I remember buying Belkin. At the time they were 8, and this kind of leads us on to the next bit we're going to talk about, is they were 802.11g cards. And I just remember, fitting those out and using Belkin gear. But obviously, we talked about the first standard being 2 megabits. Help us understand, because, 802.11 A, B, C, D, E, F, and U. Sorry.
Yeah, so the very first version of Wi-Fi didn't have a letter after it at all. It was just 802.11. And then the second version was B. And then the very first time 5 gigahertz was used was in 11A. And then we had G, N, AC, AX, and then that's it at the moment.
What do these letters mean? Because you've put a really handy link into LifeWire that explains all the different standards. And there's actually more in there. What I didn't realise is that, for example, 802.11r is the standard that allows what we, correct me if I remember, wireless roaming, which is very important in networks, particularly in business networks, but in mesh networks, that's vital, right? If you don't have 802.11r, mesh Wi-Fi just does not work.
Well, kind of. So 802.11r it used to be quite an important thing to have, but things like Unify have stopped supporting it, or it's off by default. It's not as...
Oh.
I don't think it's as important as it used to be. With roaming in enterprise environments, a lot of the roaming happens from the client side.
Oh.
The client decides when it wants to roam, it evaluates the signal level of APs and sort of makes a decision based on different neighbors it can see, and then it decides, I want to roam. So,
and I have to apologize to Jay. I thought Alex had put that link in. It turns out that was Jay being amazingly like Jay and putting awesome links in. So we'll make sure that's in there.
I just wanted people to know that I know.
You know stuff, right?
Yeah. I have set up Wi-Fi networks, and that's as far as I'll go, but I have set up Wi-Fi networks for different businesses.
Oh, yeah. No. I mean, it's, I think certainly I have. Obviously, Alex has done a lot. We've all, probably all of us, maybe some of us listening, have been ones to set up Wi-Fi. I mean, I remember, getting drafted in to help family members set up their Wi-Fi.
I bricked routers with WRT before SSHing into them.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I've done that. I bricked a TP-Link Archer C9, irretrievably bricked an Archer C9, trying to put that onto it.
Mine was a Netgear. It was a really solid Netgear router, and I felt so bad because it was $100 that I bricked.
Oh, no. So, Alex, quick question for you, because obviously, look, these standards, they all do different things, but right now, you said we've got Wi-Fi 6, which is 802.11x, AX, sorry.
Yep.
Help me just understand, what 6E, is that still AX? It's just an evolution, it is just a modular, is it like AC, because there was AC Wave 2, wasn't there?
Yeah, it's more a revision to the standard. Even though it's not really a revision, it's a massive change, really. But they haven't given it a different letter acronym. It's just I think they're moving away from the letter acronyms maybe. But with Wi-Fi 6E is the addition of a separate frequency. So we've got 6 gigahertz now as well.
Oh, okay.
I think one important thing to bring up on all these different frequencies is I think 5 gigahertz is faster, but it also has a shorter range. Whereas like 2.4 gigahertz is slower, but you can you don't have to be as close to the Wi-Fi router. And for, at least for a while, you would have like one network that would be 2.4, one network that would be 5, and you would try not to put any device on the 5 that would slow down that, but you had to make sure that you had different things. I know my router here, I have an Eero, will automatically switch you between the networks intelligently, but it was always one of those, like I've been some places where they turned off the 2.4 gigahertz, but did not have any other Wi-Fi, and they were like, why is it getting slow? Well, because you have to be closer to the Wi-Fi router.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Alex, is it AD that's like ridiculously fast? It's at a really high frequency, but it's only something like 30 feet.
Well, with a lot of wireless stuff, so we're going to mention 2.4, 5, and 6. There's a lot more stuff. There's a lot more of the spectrum which is used for a lot more applications. So you'll see sometimes on phone masts, you'll see there's some dishes and things. Those are ultra high frequency but ultra high capacity sort of point to point devices, and they'll use anything from 10 gigahertz, 11, 18, 24, all the way up to 80 gigahertz sometimes. So I think the bit you're referencing is the Wi-Fi element of 60 gigahertz, which hasn't really gone anywhere that much. No real consumer devices have started using it, but it is in use in something like, so in the Ubiquiti world, you've got the Unified Building Bridge. You've also got the gigabeams, as they use 60 gigahertz for point-to-point between buildings. They've got a range of about 500 to 1.5 kilometers, so 500 meters to 1.5 kilometers. But they can do up to 2 or 3 gigabit per second.
On that sort of distance?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know of one installation where they had a building and then they had an annex across the parking lot, and they did that. They sent a signal from the main building to there, and it helped get the Wi-Fi signal, because then they had a router in the annex that would send around. And I was fascinated by that technology.
Yeah. So
because Linus has done some stuff on this. I think Chris has as well.
Yeah, so the stuff Linus did was using Ubiquiti's air fiber devices, and what Ubiquiti have done, and we'll get into a bit more later on, they've used the 82.11 standard, but stripped it back and added their own code on top to make it more efficient outdoors. What I'm on about with the Unified Building Bridge, that just uses AD for that. But the gigabeams, the air fibers, they all use Ubiquiti's custom code and makes it more efficient and faster and over longer distances.
So going back to these frequencies, like to just help us understand a little bit about, again, as Jay said, as the frequency goes up, is it true that the speed gets faster but the range can decrease quite a bit, or is that always the case?
It is. So think of it like a wave. So when you have a lower frequency, so I don't know, 1 gigahertz and lower in the megahertz space, the wave, it's very long and very far apart. It's hard for listeners to visualize it, but there'll be some links that we can put down. But when the frequency goes up, the wave becomes tighter. So what the bit you're on about is that once the frequency goes higher, it propagates less. As the case is with 2.4 gigahertz, it's starting to become pretty unusable in some scenarios because everything's using it now. So wireless headphones using it, microwaves, just by design.
Cordless phones.
Yeah. Bluetooth receivers, wireless microphone receivers for filming and things. So it's starting to become less and less usable. Generally, nowadays, pretty much every device has 5 gigahertz support. So what I do at home is I have 2.4 disabled. I use it for IoT devices like light switches and that sort of thing. But all my client devices are on 5 gigahertz. That's sort of the best way to do it, really.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And Jay made an interesting point about this sort of smart roaming, roaming's the wrong word. Also, can I just make sure we are careful with the term? Mm-hmm. And I'm not at all wanting to put anyone down. Can we be very careful with the term Wi-Fi router? Because Wi-Fi router is not the correct term when we're talking about something that's not maybe like, for example, your ISP router, or I guess technically the UDR is a Wi-Fi router.
Yep.
But if you're talking about just a wireless access point, that's not a router in itself. I just want to be very clear that not every wireless device is going to be its own router. Is that?
That's completely correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not, and it's one of the things we wanted to do on this episode is break some of that. Jay is using a term that is so common. Yeah. Everyone just says Wi-Fi router. Yeah. Right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so a typical router like a Netgear router, it's actually 3 devices in one. It's a wireless access point, it's a switch, which the switch is actually more important than you think, like it's doing a lot more than you think. And then it's got the routing as well. And if you think a lot of that all of that functionality is being controlled by one CPU, which is a problem again. So yeah, it's 3 devices in one, and in enterprise scenarios, you have all of those devices separated out. You have dedicated, really super powerful routers and firewalls, and dedicated switches, and then access points as well. So,
would it be safe to say, and this is me just trying to clarify for me and for listeners, the router would handle like all the DHCP and
yep, the routing bit translates the devices internally with the wider internet, basically.
That makes sense. Okay. And I appreciate that, because that is one where I had just put them all together, and you make a very valid point on that.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. I think we'll put some links into the frequencies. 2.4 gigahertz. If you ever use one of those Wi-Fi scanning apps or something like that, it's just amazing. Particularly if you're in a block of flats or a crowded neighborhood, you'll see so much. Now, we're going to talk about things you can do later to optimize maybe poor Wi-Fi performance. And I think as a spoiler for that, wouldn't it be great if you could go around your block of flats and agree with all your neighbors? Okay, you're on this frequency, you're on this channel, you're on this one, you're on this one. I mean,
you mentioned that. So apparently, with the new BT hubs, I think it's coming soon or not yet. But
okay.
If everyone in a street's got a BT hub, they'll all intelligently work out together which channels they should be on and correlate that. So obviously, not everyone's going to have a BT hub because they're not the best thing to be using. But that's, for a lot of people, that's going to be quite cool.
What's kind of interesting with that is I do know that the Eros also tend to do that in their cloud. That they try to work out which network is what. And it's interesting that you mentioned the different things, because I just thought about something that it's not as much of a tangent. Amazon has been creating their own network per se called Amazon Sidewalk for internet access amongst all their devices. So I'm not trying to, I just wanted to bring that up, and we'll have a link in the show notes, but it's a very fascinating, smaller network.
Actually, let's come back to that, because that's something, it's not in the show notes, but it's something I want to ask Alex about, because Amazon aren't the only ones doing this. And
yeah. So
we've talked a lot about the frequencies, and so at the moment, Alex, obviously, 5 gigahertz is probably going to be now, if I remember correctly, putting 802.11a aside, because it's a bit of an odd one.
Yes.
By itself. But 802.11n can be at 5 gigahertz, and I believe that means it's N is Wi-Fi 4.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I have a quick question for you. A lot of people kicked off when some of Apple's newer HomePods only did Wi-Fi 4.
Yep.
That's not a problem, though, is it? Because even though it isn't going to have the faster speed, I think, if I remember, isn't N limited to about 600?
It depends on what channel width you're using, but I think it's about that.
Now, this is megabits. Now, but if all you're doing is music streaming and maybe sending stuff device to device, and obviously some Thread stuff, you don't need super fast Wi-Fi, do you? You don't need AX.
No, so 802.11n is 300 megabits. I think you're on a 40 megahertz channel. But no, I understood ages ago wrongly. It was said, it's just a general thing that was understood was that your network is only as fast as your slowest device. What I stupidly thought that meant was, if I've got 10 devices connected to my network, one of them's 802.11n, but all of them are Wi-Fi 5 or AC. Oh, my whole network can be as slow as this old device.
Ah, because I thought that too. So,
yeah.
Okay,
me too.
Yeah, that isn't the case. What that saying means is that, let's imagine you've got a gigabit internet connection, but you've got a router that's really rubbish and only capable of, I don't know, a couple hundred megabits. That's what it means. It means there's no point in having all these good things in line and having, if you get what I mean.
Yes.
I've got a really good example of that, actually. That's a really good case. So that makes a lot of sense. So in a previous job, we had Virgin Business came and fitted actually 200 megabit symmetric fiber to our building. Great. We were all wondering, why are we getting like 60 or 70? Why is it not improving? And then I did a bit of investigation, sort of like the de facto head of IT. I said to our boss, I said, well, I can tell you why. All of our internal network switches, every single one of them is 100 megabits.
Yeah.
Now, that means, because there's overhead on everything, right? I mean, but even we were probably saturating at 100 megabits, and our internet was much faster. So we actually ended up replacing all our switches with, we went Unify, actually. Yep. We went, that is one thing I wanted to address at the top of the episode. Sorry, and I forgot, and it's just reminded me. If I made the statement, Alex, that it is where possible, it is always better to run on Ethernet if you have the option. Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
100%. And anything wired is going to be so much better than wireless, because I remember when I first started podcasting, you said to me, "Why are you using Bluetooth headphones?" So I was now using wired headphones.
I didn't say quite that directly, did I? I might have done,
but. If you can, use wired. So if you got an Xbox in your house and it's not quite performing as you want it to, try and make sure it's wired into Ethernet, because that's a wired connection is always going to be the best choice.
A great example, you'll see that in action. If you try pinging between two of your devices on your network with both of them on either one of them on Wi-Fi or one of them on Ethernet, or either way, you'll see the ping fluctuates. But the minute you go onto both of them being wired, that ping will be consistent. Even, and this might shock people, even something like Powerline Ethernet is going to have a more consistent ping than Wi-Fi because it's still wired.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I had set up an entire Ethernet connection from my router over there to my computer, and I was thinking that I was good. All of a sudden, I find out that I had knocked the switch under my desk offline, and I was like, that explains why I've been getting such inconsistent speed and connection and all that.
Yep, that'll do it.
One interesting thing to also mention, because my parents won't be upset when I mention this part.
No, go for it.
Their house was built in 2003, and at the time was built with the fastest with the fastest Ethernet cables available. I think it was Cat 5 or something like that. However, the issue with that is, as their internet speed gets faster, those cables are actually becoming a limiting factor of how fast they can go because of the throughput of the Cat 5.
That's very similar to what James was mentioning with the Ethernet ports on his switches at work. I think it'd be Cat 4, I think.
Okay,
yeah.
Cat 4, yeah.
That's a massive difference, James, between the US and the UK. Like, houses, even 20 years ago, were being pre-wired with Ethernet. You imagine if that was the case here, that'd be amazing.
It would, wouldn't it? It would be amazing.
They wanted to be like, and bless them, they wanted to be forward thinkers for the future, but the problem is because who knew that internet was going to go that fast in progress.
So it probably wasn't. So Cat 5 was 100, wasn't it? It meant 5E is gigabit capable. I lose track of all this stuff, but I think maybe that's a good point. If you are going to do a network cable install, go for is it fair to say, Alex, go for the highest standard of cable that you can realistically afford at the time?
As with anything, so when Wi-Fi 6 came out, everyone was hyped over it. It's the same with cables a little bit, like Cat 7's out now. It's not really going to make a huge difference. Realistically, in 2023, Cat 5e is still fine.
Yeah, because Cat 5e will do gigabit.
Yeah.
Cat 6 will do 10 gig, I believe.
Cat 6 will do 10 gig, but over a certain distance. I can't remember what that is.
Yeah. I forget what cables I bought when I was outfitting my apartment, but I did buy something that was capable enough for what I was going to have in my apartment and for the future.
Yep. I think to be fair, the cable that runs between the studio in here and the lounge I think it's either 5e or 6. I think it might be 5. I think it's 6. I think I put Cat 6 in to run around. Anyway, let's go on, because we could spend all day talking about Ethernet and standards and everything. I want to talk a little bit about some common misunderstandings. We've already talked about one of them, about slowest devices and maybe the naming. But Alex, let me ask you this: how many times and you, Jay, as well? How many times have you heard people say, "Oh, my Wi-Fi is down"?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I had actually had this case at work, and recently someone was like, the Wi-Fi is down, or the one said the internet's down. And I'm like, okay, our wired in devices are up. So that means I need to contact our support and ask them about the access points that we had, because those were down. But yeah, as soon as the access points went down, everyone thought the internet was down. I'm like, no.
Oh, our street works both ways, doesn't it? Actually?
It does.
That's a very good point. Yeah, Alex, help us understand why do people think that? Why have we got that conception that if your internet connection has gone down, look, in this country.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yes. Yeah, I know where yours is a valid point as well.
Yes, it is.
Recently in this country, here in the UK, 2 of our ISPs had major outages. Virgin Media had nearly a whole day outage.
Yes.
I mean, that does not surprise me with Virgin Media. And then Vodafone had an outage. Actually, thankfully, it only affected me for about 10 minutes, but Vodafone's, I think their VDSL network went down.
Uh-huh.
And I saw the social media, Vodafone, my Wi-Fi's down again.
Yep.
Fix it. Help us why has that become a misconception?
That actually interesting. That outage with Virgin Media was incredibly complicated. It was actually a BGP level of routing, so that the top end of their core network, someone managed to figure out that they basically went offline, like they were deleted from like the routing network, which was quite interesting. So it took them a while to get back on. Very similar to what Facebook had a few years ago as well. So they stopped being advertised, basically. But yeah, the main difference is the internet connection is the connection that's coming to the house from the ISP. So if the internet went down, nothing in the entire house would work. So the devices connected to the Wi-Fi network wouldn't work, but they'd still be connected.
You'd still be able to talk internally, wouldn't you? Like,
yeah.
So, for example, if my internet connection went down here, I could still talk to my NAS, for example, or I could still talk to my Plex service. Some stuff HomePods wouldn't work because they need an outbound internet connection, but AirPlay still would.
Yeah, because I think my Hue lights have worked internally, not externally.
Yeah, because that again, that's communication. You wouldn't be able to use Siri to do that.
No.
But you would be able to use HomeKit because it's going internally and then going to the Hue bridge and then going out over Zigbee. So internal, and I think, Alex, that's a great illustration, isn't it? If it's anything external that's not working, it's your internet connection.
Yep.
If you can't reach your internal devices, there's something wrong with your internal network, which is possibly the Wi-Fi.
Yep, definitely.
And that's why I have actually seen more and more routers offer backup services. Like James, I know you have a backup USB stick that you could plug in, and then you could connect your router for its internet. My Euros have internet backup that I could actually hook up my phone's hotspot to.
Oh, that's cool.
That's really cool.
And because I utilized it the other day when my actual ISP went down for maintenance and I needed to do work internally. I connected my hotspot to my Eero and it was back on. It was back online. I mean,
that's such a cool feature.
Can we just say, even Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, even Ubiquity's routing, like the UDR doesn't do that. I mean, you can do redundant connections on anything above a UDR,
yep,
but you can't join it to
that's a very... Yeah.
Well, I'm going to get to one stipulation though. It requires you to have a subscription to their Eero Plus service, which
we'll come back to that.
But it is I think that was a very good distinction because sometimes it is more complex than it seems like initially that like it's your source of your internet.
Yep.
No, I mean, look, in Vodafone's case, I didn't realize this is just this is just a USB 4G dongle.
Yep.
And what I didn't realize in terms of this is only meant to be used with their router. Their routers have a USB socket. And in this case, I'm using the term router because it is a combined device.
Yep.
And it will automatically fail over to the 4G if the VDSL goes down. I think in the new case, it'll be if the fiber goes down. Now, I'm not going to be using Vodafone's gear. I'm going to be using UDR, so I lose that ability. However, I can always plug this into my Mac. But that's very, very cool that Eero does that, and Vodafone. And I think BT have got that as well, because BT now own BT and EE are part of the same.
Yep.
And I'm trying to think of who else in the United States does that, but I know a few other ISPs do have a fallback, because many times either the cable's not consistent.
So look, if you're, I'd be really interested to know if your ISP offers you that 4G backup, and you're maybe you're in the UK. I'd love to hear from people. Does your ISP offer you some form of backup? I know my friend Joel had his, is it GigaClear, Alex? One of the fiber providers?
Yeah,
they had a massive outage, and I think it's because someone had actually literally gone through the fiber on a main road.
Oh.
Which, And he's like, I need a backup connection, because he worked from home. He ended up buying, and this is probably overkill for most people. He ended up buying a second. So he had TP-Link Deco, which we'll come to mesh later, but he had that, and then he bought like a TP-Link dual WAN router and pays for a second Vodafone VDSL connection, and then has them as a failover. So, I mean, look, if you need to do that, do that. Is it one thing I did? It's probably worth mentioning. Yeah, we all work from home. Just bear in mind that your typical ISP contract from Virgin Media, from Vodafone, does not guarantee uptime. They are not business grade contracts.
Yep.
So they don't have the service level agreements to fix. If you called Rod and say, I need to do my work, well, I'm very sorry, sir, this is not a business contract, would be the response you got back.
Yeah, because I've been involved in actual business internet negotiations, and the uptime is actually part of the contract, and they'll pay you and all that for downtime.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Wi-Fi. Maybe one of the biggest myths. Well, we're talking about Wi-Fi. Let's talk about one of the biggest myths around Wi-Fi. Maybe wireless in general. That Wi-Fi is dangerous. I remember doing tech support and trying to get someone to, say, look, is your Wi-Fi working? Oh no, we've turned the Wi-Fi off because the Wi-Fi is in our child's bedroom and we don't want to get irradiated.
Well, and ever since I've had my my COVID shot, I actually am getting better internet connection.
No, Jay, please don't fuel that. Please don't fuel that on this show. I mean,
but no, similar origin stories. Yeah, is the dangerous, and I've heard that that it's dangerous to have that next to you.
Alex, can you help us debunk this myth? Why, first of all, is it even remotely true? And why do people think it's true?
Oh, that's a good question. So, as I mentioned earlier, sort of Wi-Fi hasn't really been around for that long, really. 20 years or 26 years. In general scheme of things, it's not really that long. And as always with anything new, there's always going to be some questions about its safety, and there's lots of different mixed messages and things. So the main thing was about radiation. The official sort of communication is that the frequencies that we're exposed to day to day are what you call non-ionizing. So they're nowhere near powerful enough to heat up water molecules in your body, basically. So it's a non-ionizing.
Oh, hang on. Does that mean I can't use my UDR as a microwave? Alex is looking at me with like this is a look of disgust. Like, oh, that's a terrible joke.
Yeah, so a lot of studies and stuff, and there was the same thing happened with mobile phones as well. So there was a TV show that Richard Hammond did in 2004 called "Should I Worry About?" and one of the episodes was called "Mobile Phones," and I'll link it down in the show notes for you. But it's quite funny to watch it all this time on, and the amount of people are so concerned about mobile phone towers and that sort of thing. Even the mobile phone so as you get higher and higher in the frequency space, it does become less safe to be around. But what people don't realize is the mobile phone frequencies are way lower than Wi-Fi. It's because of the distances it has to control. Distances it has to go over, because obviously when you go lower frequencies, they go further. So yeah, the general consensus is it's definitely fine to be around. So
that's good.
You're gonna love this joke. When I was explaining Wi-Fi to my niece and nephews and how Wi-Fi signals are, I told my niece, "Well, if you ever want to get your brother to leave you alone, tell him he's blocking your Wi-Fi."
Well, technically speaking,
yes,
he would be.
Yes,
he would be. Yeah. So I told him, and she laughed.
I mean, look, and my nephew in question is quite tall.
Yes.
So in fact, all three of Jay's nephews are quite tall. So hey, nephews, if you're listening to this episode, and nephew's mum, I know you listen to our show. If you ever have Wi-Fi signals, just tell your sons to move over a little bit.
I definitely understand the concern, because everything that you have around you. Now, can I also stop here's a misconception I wanted to ask you about, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
One time someone was telling me, well, whenever we open the door, the Wi-Fi tends to go down. Like they would, that was and I tried explaining that that's not quite how it works. But whenever they open the front door, would there be any truth to that? Or is that just them trying to find an anecdote to explain something?
Well, it'd be more when you've got the door closed. So I think we all three of us use Mac OS. If you click on option and then click on the Wi-Fi icon, it'll open up more information about the dBm level of the Wi-Fi connection as well. I've noticed before that when doors have been closed, I'll lose about 3 or 4 dBs on 5 gigahertz. So it's more that when things are objects are in the way, like metal or wood or really old buildings, that the Wi-Fi just gets absorbed. And that's more the case with higher frequencies because it propagates less. So
thanks, because I tried explaining that in one way, but I wanted to ask you directly because yeah, they would always be like, oh, the Wi-Fi went down.
Let's move on. I think the next thing we should talk about, and this is one of my pet peeves about people's Wi-Fi setups. I'm going to flip this around a little bit. Alex, if you've got poor Wi-Fi in your flat, in your home, and you're using, say, a off-the-shelf consumer-grade Wi-Fi router, and I do mean router in this case, I mean maybe ISP provided or something like, I don't know, maybe a Netgear or a Bellkit. No, I don't think even Bell can make access points what routers anymore they used to do, or something like that. What is the solution to it's the solution to buy Wi-Fi extenders?
So I think if you got a relatively large house, or a house that's quite old, and you walk away from the Wi-Fi router, you'll see on your phone that the signal level's gone down. So in the simple layer of putting a Wi-Fi extender in, yes, that will improve the connection that you'll have to your phone, if that makes sense.
Right.
So that will essentially improve the signal level between your phone and the Wi-Fi extender. With anything network-based, you got to take in consideration how is that device connecting to the main router. So Wi-Fi extenders, they're essentially taking the information from the Wi-Fi router, digesting it, and then moving it on, and that takes a lot of time and it just takes a lot of time. So you'll generally find that anything not mesh-based, but extender-based, it will take, general rule of thumb is it will take half of the speed away.
Right. So let me just make sure. So what we're saying is, yes, you will see a stronger signal on your device because by the very nature, you are now closer to an access point,
yes.
In this case, the extender.
Yep.
But if you put, let's say, that at the point that you get down to, say, I hate the word bars, but 2 signal marks on the Wi-Fi thing, your phone, the signal that the extender gets is identical to the poor signal that your phone would get. It's then trying to boost that signal and probably with an overhead, which means actually would it be fair? You'll probably end up being worse off potentially because there's the overhead of the extender as well. Am I making sense?
Yes. So if you've got a 2-story house and upstairs in one of the bedrooms, your laptop it can see the signal, see the Wi-Fi connection, the SSID for it, but can't authenticate. It's just too weak to authenticate. Yes, a Wi-Fi extender will allow your laptop to get some level of connection, if that makes sense. It is a solution, but it isn't one of the best solutions. Like like anything, there's always good and bad solutions. So
I've got a question on that. Are we talking the extender being a Ethernet backhaul or
Wi-Fi
or wireless backhaul?
Yep.
Wireless. So
okay.
That because Jay, you've just really tipped onto the point that I was just going to ask. Some of these extenders actually are power line based, and so they aren't taking a backhaul from the same Wi-Fi. They're then effectively creating a copy of the network, of a copy of the SSID, but the backhaul's a power line. Would they be more reliable than traditional Wi-Fi extenders, would you say?
Well, I'll just mention one of my big pet peeves with these Wi-Fi extenders and the power line adapter ones. They don't do what's called BSSIDs properly, or neighboring information. So if you've got like Jae's Eero system, your phone will see one SSID and it will actually properly connect to the nearest access point. What I've found with the extenders is they'll just make a separate SSID, and your phone gets very confused about what to do.
Oh,
yes, because that's one of the things I actually set up a extender system. I actually had Ethernet between the two extenders, and they were sharing the same SSID. But yeah, I would find that my phone would still either shut down. I mean, depending on the device would just not do anything, or it would sometimes connect to the wrong SSID, even if they looked the same inside of the system.
But that's because there's the SSID. I mean, Alex, so we said the BSSID is the...
Yeah, so what it is, it's a basic service set. And that generally means that it's the matching SSID, and then compatible authentication, and then also there's some sort of communication between the devices. So, but yeah, the BSSID is what your phone uses to differentiate the access points within a office or a house. So
I did not know about that. That's a learning for me.
And that then moves us on to mesh, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, when you've got a proper mesh system, they are using the same BSSID.
They are.
And
yep.
so it knows how to properly roam. So let's talk about mesh Wi-Fi. First of all, I mean, mesh Wi-Fi, how does that work? How is it better than just repeating the signal with a Wi-Fi extender? What makes it different?
So for one, it's doing the service set properly, so your phone knows what to do. Generally, so with the Wi-Fi extenders, there isn't any dedicated radios to do all the backhaul. So like Jae's Eero, there'll be a dedicated radio. So in the ones I'm familiar with, you'll have a 2.4 gigahertz radio for the clients, a 5 gigahertz radio for the clients, and also a third 5 gigahertz radio for clients. Sorry, for the backhaul. So that third radio will be dedicated for doing backhaul, kind of like a point-to-point network, and that will have a dedicated frequency for it as well, and that will make sure that a good amount of bandwidth or throughput is assigned to that access point, and they generally work pretty okay, to be honest.
And so basically, what we're saying is that a mesh system like Eero, like TP-Link Deco,
Amplify as well.
I keep forgetting about Amplify as a product. Yeah, it's expensive, but I've heard good things about it.
Yep,
I've actually been in places that have used Amplify.
Okay,
so I'm not like as a consumer or as a person, but I've seen that the places that have used that.
It's very interesting how much mesh gear is on the market now, and how affordable it is.
And am I right that mesh was much more on the enterprise level for a long time, but was not as available to consumers?
Kind of, yeah, not like it is now. So I think when you've got an office building with Ubiquiti access points or Cisco access points, generally that's kind of referred to as mesh sometimes. But the big differentiator with that is the backhaul for those devices are Ethernet.
Okay,
so that's a wired backhaul. Interestingly, some mesh solutions can actually have wide backhaul as well. I think yours can.
Yeah. Eero has that.
Eero can. Some of the Decos can. The Linksys Velop can. I think higher end. I mean, well, I don't look. I'll be honest. Netgear Orbi, stay away from. Junk. It's junk.
My parents' house has Eero, and they have. Some of their devices are Ethernet backhaul, and then they have these little beacons that you can plug into a power, and those are wireless backhaul. But I think I've got to say wherever I am in their house, I've got internet. So I of course set that up. So I made sure it was good for them. But yeah.
So, Jay, you put something in here because we talked a little bit about how mesh works, and I'll see if we can find some. Alex, can we find a good, or Jay, can we find a good, sort of nice video demonstration of how mesh works for our listeners to look at? I think someone's done some good stuff on this. But yeah, and on some of Ubiquiti have started to bring out like true mesh, haven't we? Like mesh access points which do use a wireless backhaul that aren't Ethernet. I think, is it the U6 mesh?
Yeah, so back in like 2016, 17, the Ubiquiti launched the AC mesh, the little access point, little bunny as I call it. Those are sort of proper Wi-Fi mesh devices. The U6 mesh. So all of Unify access points can do mesh. It's just like a branding thing. They've got like a U6 beacon as well, which is designed for US outlet sockets to sort of cover up both sockets that are top down, like one at the top, one at the bottom. Provides coverage like a garage or something. We don't need much bandwidth, but
there was one network, one that I was really interested in. It seems I haven't heard much from recently. Plume.
Yeah, I was looking at Plume, and what was interesting about Plume was because of how small the devices are. I was watching a CNET video on this. They need those you have to have more plumes to be, whereas like even like an Eero has a wider range. But from what I've been told, Plume is really nice because
they have a lot of features. Yeah.
Yeah. I was impressed with Plume, and if I went all in on Eero for my parents' house, but Plume was one that I was very interested in. Now, one big issue about mesh in particular, for instance, AT&T in the States has their modem. You can't separate the modem from the router. You have to leave the router active. What you can do, you can put the Eero into a DMZ, but sometimes, so then that way you don't have to put your router or AP into a bridge mode, but sometimes you do. If you have to do a bridge mode, you do sometimes lose some features that certain mesh systems rely on because of how they do different things. So
So are you talking about where because even a mesh system like the Deco, like a lot of these, can be put into access point mode. I guess at that point, what you would I think maybe if you put something in, because all of these can act as one of them will act as your router, one of them will act as your external router. But if you put them into AP mode, then they will still act as a Wi-Fi mesh, but just as access points, or is that not quite the case? Yeah.
So in your home network, you only want one device being a router. So if you have two devices as routers, the device like the modem router from the ISP, and you have another one behind it, you'll have a situation what we call double NAT. It's a little bit technical for some of the listeners maybe, but yeah. So you'll have ideally in a house you want one device being the router. If you have double NAT situation, you'll have problems with things like VoIP phones with VPNs and Xbox generally. So you want to avoid that. I think what Jay was referring to with the features of the Wi-Fi mesh devices was, for what I remember, something like the Google Wi-Fi devices, they had like client controlling features, like you could schedule the time that certain devices connect. You can inspect the packets that go through it. And I think if you disable the routing feature of the Wi-Fi mesh device, you're essentially throwing away those features and sort of not using them.
Yeah. Because like on the Eero, you lose, for instance, family profiles, Eero Plus, Eero Labs, and on that one, you lose things like there's WPA3 on Eero Labs. There's client steering, there's quality of service. So you in essence still allow it, but you have to. There are some actual features that the mesh system can do better.
Yes.
But if you go into bridge mode, you lose some features.
So just to be clear, do we just because I think what's happened, I might be wrong, but I think we're getting terms. We're talking about going into AP mode where the modem still acts. The modem from the ISP is the combined router.
Yes.
That's divvying out DHCP. That's controlling the devices. Whereas the access points, the mesh is access point only, which means. Yeah, so what we're saying is, by definition, if those access points aren't controlling the routing of the internet traffic and handing out the addresses, they can't control what those devices do. Yeah, so the same with TP-Link Deco. If you put it into access point mode, you don't get quality of service because it's not the final destination of the packets. Is that
100%? Yeah.
Yeah, and on an Eero, you lose WPA3, you lose client steering. So
WPA3 makes no sense to lose.
That makes no sense. Yeah.
I don't get why they did it that way, but that's how they did it on.
Oh, do you know what? I wonder if it is that locked behind Eero Plus.
Not Eero Plus, but it's in their Eero Labs, which you lose access to if you go into bridge mode. I don't understand all the.
No. Okay.
Yeah, but I wanted to put it out there because there are some features you do lose on a system if you go into bridge mode. So you want to be
AP mode again. I'm trying. Okay, because So bridge mode is something. Sorry, Jay, I don't mean to.
No, yeah,
because we want to be we want to be really clear. Bridge mode is actually something good. Bridge mode is where your ISP. So, for example, Virgin Media's mode, super hubs, they are far from super, can be put into bridge mode or modem only mode. And what that means is they just act as the modem, right? And that means your Eero, your Deco, your whatever mesh is acting as the router, right? They get the Ethernet cable that you go out the back of your, say, Virgin Media Super Hub or whatever, or Comcast modem, whatever. The cable that goes into the Eero, for example, in Jay's case, that will just pass on the external IP. It's just a modem. That's what we mean by bridge mode. Double NAT is where, and Alex is right, effectively what you end up with is a firewall there on the router and another firewall on the other router, the access point. Now, you can sort of work around that. So, for example, you can sort of work around it by putting the access point into the router's DMZ, but it's messy and risky. I'll give people a pro tip, if you are a Vodafone customer in the UK, and maybe many, PlusNet also, and you're on VDSL, go and buy one of the a used BT OpenReach VDSL modem. I will try and find the link to put in the show notes. Buy those. Contact Vodafone support. They will give you the PPPoE details, and you can use your own modem, which means you then never have to worry about double NAT. And they're about 20 quid on eBay. I've got one. It's worth every penny.
And I need to apologize. I got confused by Eero calls their AP mode bridge mode. So that was where my confusion came from.
That's interesting, but I mean, and Alex, that seems like a silly term to call it.
Well, it kind of makes sense a little bit, because essentially the Eero is, bridge mode typically refers to a device that has a modem built in. I guess it's kind of a loose term, I guess.
Yeah, but that's why I was getting confused. I apologize, Jay.
Oh, no, because in Eero's case, by bridge mode, the DSGP is handled by whatever device is in front of the Eero.
Right.
And the Eero itself just handles the AP access. Yeah.
I just want to point out, so we mentioned double NAT. So if you do happen to have problems with things like VPN services, so if you've purchased one of these mesh systems and just plugged it in and we're wondering why you're getting some sort of weird issues with Xbox and PlayStation and these sort of gaming services and VPN services, that's probably the case. You've probably got the ISP modem in router mode, and you've probably got the Wi-Fi device mesh system in router mode as well. So they're both doing two jobs at the same time.
The way you will notice that, a really big tip how you'll notice it, if you go into your mesh system and you get and what it says your WAN IP, WAN, which is meant to be the external IP, is a 192 or similar address. Is Alex, that's a fair guess that you're in double NAT, right?
Yeah, the internal IP ranges you'll see 192.168, you'll see 172 dot something, and then 10 dot something. Anything else will be a public IP address.
So if you see an internal network range as the WAN address, what your mesh system thinks is your external IP, then you're in double NAT.
Yep.
And in the United States, I don't know how it is in the UK, you can you can typically lower your monthly cable bill by either using your own modem or, like in my case, I declined the Wi-Fi router that they wanted to provide me.
Our ISPs don't seem to do that, do they, Alex? Like, they just seem to... Go on.
The only one I found that does is a company called Cuckoo. So they're an ISP that uses OpenReach's network. And the guy who started that company, another guy called Alex, is such a nice guy. and that company is doing some cool stuff. And if you go through and order their broadband service, you can say, I don't want your router, and they'll tell you on their help center exactly what to do to install your own router and stuff. So
I wish every ISP did that.
Like my ISP wanted to give me a Wi-Fi router, and I was like, no, I already have one. I just need your modem. And but some of the ISPs here, even the modem itself will be a monthly charge, and you can go for your own. Now, the one caveat on that, at least in the United States, if you go for your own modem, your ISP will not support you as well. So you want to be very careful when you do that. You're kind of on your own in that territory.
That's true here as well. Vodafone will insist, it's why I keep their router around, they will insist that I plug back in their stuff. I don't know if that'll be the case if I'm trying full fiber again. We'll see if a City Fiber can actually connect this time, folks.
I remember in the early days of even broadband here, I got in trouble with my old ISP back then because if I even had a Netgear Ethernet router behind my modem, they got upset because back then they were like, "What are you doing putting a router behind our modem?" And like their modem didn't do anything other than just had Ethernet.
I think that would have been misconceptions on their side. I think
it was huge misconceptions on their side, but this is the early days of broadband.
So now, Jay, we just hinted on this as well, and it's something I'm wanting to ask both of you experience on. So Jay mentioned, let's talk about, first of all, should you replace your ISP provided all-in-one Wi-Fi router? Is it a foregone conclusion that router is going to be a piece of junk? Alex, your experience from the UK side?
not always. So if you've got a small flat or something, then and not many devices, you live, I don't know, one or two people, you're probably going to be fine. If you found that some areas, and also we're going to get to it later, but where you put your router is a big thing. So I was recently looking at some houses, and a lot of these new builds, they terminate the internet connection under the stairs. I'd imagine that quite a few people just put the router under the stairs as well, and then will wonder why they can't pick up Wi-Fi upstairs, which would be...
Oh, yes.
So no, not all the ISP-provided routers are going to be absolute rubbish. So the standard BT ones are okay-ish. They're okay. If you've got a large family, I don't know, two parents and 2 or 3 kids, and you're all doing things at the same time, and you've got a lot of space, generally the thing that's going to harm you is the drop off in signal levels in the extremities of the house and in the garden and that sort of thing. So it just depends.
But that's a really interesting, yeah, because I know, for example, so I know my sister, for example, has had some issues recently where they're in a relatively small house, but they've got the Sky router stuck in the corner by the TV, where the phone point is.
Or behind the TV.
Yeah, behind the TV. I'm assuming by your expression, but putting a router behind a TV is probably not a good idea.
Well, no, so anything metal, it's going to... Yeah, so, and if you think inside a TV, there's a lot of metal, there's a lot of screen and a lot of materials, and if you put it behind quite a thick TV, you're going to have some issues, so...
That's a really good point. And obviously you've then got got other emissions going on around there, particularly if, you've got lots of devices around there. I know she does. But probably my nephew's room is not getting enough signal. In her case, because she's doing a lot of stuff on Wi-Fi, he's got multiple devices and is wanting to do high bandwidth stuff, and they haven't got a massively high speed connection. We'll be fixing that. But in their case, a mesh system is going to be good for them now.
From the US side, not all of the ISPs provided routers are bad either.
Okay.
I was actually just looking at the one, if I were to have taken the ISP provided router with the subscription fee, it actually isn't too bad. Now, they mentioned something called total home coverage. I was trying to find specifics. The actual device itself does Wi-Fi 6. It does a lot of things internally. And the total home coverage, I don't know if it's mesh or just an AP extender. Comcast Xfinity. There is an interesting thing that last I heard, they actually were using Plume for their extra things. So what I've been told is theirs might not be bad. So it all depends on your ISP. I would say that my parents' ISP, I would not recommend the router that they have, but it all depends on who your ISP is in the States.
Actually, that's a good point, because here in the UK, Alex, BT are doing like the whole mesh thing, aren't they?
I was just on the website for that. Yeah, I actually forgot about it. They're doing like a pack of, they look like coasters that are being sort of put on the side. You put those around the house and it should do a okayish job.
And sometimes, in my opinion, unless you have to factor in the costs, you have to factor in technical support.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes it might just be better off to go with those. It all depends on how much work you want to go and how much research you want to do.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I mean, I don't think, but so I've got a UDR, which was actually, I mean, look, Alex did me and Jay a great deal on buying that UDR, and it has been fantastic. But I know my way around a network. I don't think, Alex, we're suggesting that everyone should go out and install Unify in their home, right?
It's definitely a learning experience. I've watched quite a few YouTubers buy it for the first time and say, just to sort of a precursor, this is quite a big learning curve. You have to have some networking knowledge. Ubiquiti do an incredibly good job of making it easy, though.
Oh yeah,
the interface for it is it blows anything out of the water. Yeah, it makes networking management very easy. So
it does. I guess it all depends on your scenarios. Now, what about like routers that have subscriptions for extra services, Alex, like Eero Plus? I know Plume have a subscription for their stuff, and I think. I'm not sure if I know of any others. Like TP-Link have a home guard, but it's like this, we'll give you all this free, but it's not really a subscription, but it is an online service. It's kind of it's basically their security feature set. Do you think that there is a value in those extra protection features like network-wide anti-malware, family controls, things like that? Are they worth paying for if it's an optional extra on a mesh system?
I'm not sure. So something like the UDR you've got, that's got all the features that comes with it for free. So it's got intrusion prevention. So if people aren't too sure what that means, it will actually be scanning all the traffic that's coming in and out your network and saying, "Whoa, hold up, this looks a bit dodgy," and block it. And you can even do a lot of traffic routing. So there's a lot of stuff with the UDR that, even at the good price point the UDR is, a lot of stuff comes with it for free. I think Jay would be better to say on what things that she's got with Eero Plus. What sort of features come with that?
So Eero Plus, you get a subscription to Malwarebytes if you need that, to Encrypt.me VPN. You also get access to a 1Password family account. You get access to, I am not as impressed with their DNS anymore. They used to use Zscaler and they've moved to this new one I'm not as impressed on. I'm actually trying to get a Pi so I can actually move to a Pi hole for that. You do get access to threat blocking, ad blocking, and different things. So there are some benefits to Eero Plus, but I would personally say not as much as there used to be. I think since Amazon acquired them, I've seen their service go down.
Yeah. I can't think of many others, Alex, that do a subscription. As you said, the UDR. Now, look, should we just put something in context here? Because you said at a great price it is, and I agree with you. The UDR retail, what is it, about 200 to something?
£195, and then for our US listeners and Jay, it is...
Jay's in the US? Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
And Jay, okay, yeah.
It's $199, so it's actually probably cheaper. Yeah, well, that works out at £160, which that's always the case. Any electronics I've seen that are on sale in both countries, it always works out cheaper when you convert it. So,
is that including VAT though on our side, Alex? I don't think it is it?
Oh, it is. It is.
Oh, is it? That's including VAT. Bear in mind, in the US, they will have to pay sales tax. Sales tax is never factored in to US pricing.
I never understood that, to be honest.
It is. I hate it. Because you think, oh, this is great. Oh, you get like I will say the UDR was not available when I bought my router, but I definitely would have gone for UDR because can I just say, like, some of the cool things you get, like even like teleport, you get your own VPN access.
Yes.
And I have to say that Ubiquiti has gone a long way on their consumer devices on managing, because I remember like listening to a lot of to Marco talking about trying to get his old Ubiquiti stuff going. He had to like open up on a web portal interface, and they've gone a long way.
It still is a web portal.
Yeah.
The difference is, I think, that the UDR combines all. It is hardware-wise, it is a Wi-Fi router. It has a switch. It has a router. It has a Wi-Fi access point, and it then has the unified controller. And I think, it has a unified controller. So all that in one, but with much more powerful hardware than you would get in an ISP router. I mean, this thing has 2 PoE ports, folks.
I know.
And it can run Unifi's Protect software, which is, we are waiting for someone to come back to us on that. We are going to be doing an episode. I think with Alex, you're on this one, aren't you? If we get Tom's... Oh, you know what? Not to put Tom under... Tom has actually already said he'd come back and do it, so we're going to do an episode about things like Unified Protect and Synology Surveillance Station. And then not to leave any HomeKit users out, probably next month, we're going to be hopefully talking to Stephen Robles again about HomeKit Secure Video, so different ends of the scale. But, Alex, I didn't put this in my show note because we do want to talk about some of the other cool stuff. Quick take. Have you had, and if you haven't, it's absolutely fine. Have you had any experience of Apple's HomeKit routing stuff, the stuff they've been working on with, I think Linksys have some, and old versions of the Eero did, but don't anymore.
And I have been using the Eero HomeKit, by the way, on my side too.
Have they taken the feature away?
They have on some of the modern devices. Mine was one of the last ones to include it.
I see.
But as of right now, they might be bringing it back. But as of right now, some of the newer devices do not have HomeKit. I
see. I haven't used it. But a lot of the functionality that it does offer in a one-click button, I have implemented using firewall rules myself for HomeKit. So it's essentially, as you'll probably talk about in a different episode with Stephen, but it's essentially doing some very advanced firewall rules in a one-click button.
Oh, I know what you... Okay, so you can do... Look, I can do this on my Unify where I can say, okay, nothing on the guest network... Oh, sorry, the idiot network, ID10T network, my network for... I'm trying to gradually move everything across.
Yeah.
I hope people get that joke. ID10T. I've got all my... And they can't talk to anything on the main network or on the network I've set up for my work devices.
Yeah.
I'm that nerdy, folks. I have a separate network for my work-issued devices because I don't want them getting onto my NAS, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I have it set up on my Eero router, and what's cool is you can actually add HomeKit devices through Eero, and then they will. You can say, hey, I only want inbound, outbound, so you can control at a fine level.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
because let's be like your light bulbs, your thermostat probably doesn't need internet access.
No. So I've got some LifeFix light bulbs at home. They're on their own SSID, and they're in a network group that's called NOT, so Nothing of Things.
Nice.
And they're banned from using all internet access, any network access. The only thing they're allowed to do is to use multicast to the Apple TVs.
That makes sense. And now, quick question on that, Alex. How does that affect things like firmware updates, or do they get done through the LifeFix app?
Well, so I can't actually update the software on them. I have to give them internet access again temporarily, update the software, and then do it. But I never really bother. So
no, okay, fair enough. I guess if we're not exposed to the internet, it's not really a problem, is it?
No.
But anyway,
can I add some real-time follow-up from Eero? Eero Pro 6E and Eero 6 Plus do not support Apple HomeKit, and we have no plans to offer Apple's HomeKit router functionality in the Eero Pro 6E and Eero 6 Plus. We will continue to fully support other Apple HomeKit features.
That sucks.
That's a shame.
I know. I'm gonna guess.
You know why? Because Amazon, right?
Well, what I'm actually guessing, and I'm gonna be on their defense. Those two devices probably are maxed on what they can do in this generation, because they are now doing like multi-gigabit stuff.
I don't think it's that though, Jay. I think it is. I think it is far more. Amazon do not want to be promoting HomeKit above the
Alexa stuff.
I could see that, yeah. So one reason why I want to move away from Eero at some point.
All right, let's move on to something Alex sort of hinted at earlier. Alex put this down as amazing use cases. Now it's kind of this, and I agree. So let's talk about WISPs, not WASPs, but WISPs. What is a WISP?
So yeah, I hinted at it earlier. So I used to work at one for probably 7 or 8 years. So a lot of the equipment that we used, a lot of the Ubiquiti equipment, so you've got the nanostations, the power beams, that sort of thing, the wireless point-to-point antennas, they actually use Wi-Fi as an underlying technology. So when Ubiquiti first started making devices for that sort of use case back in like 2005, then the original NanoStation just used the Wi-Fi standard, H.2.11, and you did it that way. The main problem with that is the way that Wi-Fi works is, so it does something called neighbor detection. And it actually, so it's to do with how packets are transmitted. So if I've got a phone and iPad next to each other, they'll actually be communicating with each other and figure out when's best to broadcast and make sure they're not colliding. If you've got a 20-kilometer link, that's not going to be very, very possible. So with AirMax, Ubiquiti developed their own system. But as I said, wireless infrastructure, wireless technology is in use in so many different places. On my own podcast, Creator Spotlight, I spoke to David Theodore last year. He's a big advocate for using wireless technology to overcome natural disasters. So there was a natural disaster in Puerto Rico a few years ago, and within a few days, so that natural disaster had wiped out all the cable and fiber lines in the whole country, leaving the whole country offline. And within a few days, they'd used air fibers and other Ubiquiti hardware to get the whole country back online within a few days, which was just incredible. But yeah, so with WISPs, getting coverage to rural locations, WISPs are a massive thing in the US. Every state has their own little one, I think. But yeah, it's farms and different locations, and especially here in the UK in Devon, it's quite a rural area. And getting the coverage to them when they need it until the fiber rolls out is really, really important. So
that's because a friend of mine's family, their house, and I think at some point they are getting proper fiber, because look, the fiber rollout in this country is going to take time. Yeah. My only gripe with our fiber rollout randomly is, surely this should all be being done by one company. Like, isn't the whole point of OpenReach that they're meant to be separate from BT and handle the country's infrastructure? Or am I off on that? I don't know. Maybe I'm.
That's more like that'd be a lot more like a nationalisation sort of thing.
True. I don't think we want. Yeah, let's not get into that. Yeah, but they are with. I think it's Wessex Internet, and they're an ISP, WISP. Yeah. They're with them. I know. Look, Creator, he drives me crazy at times because I wish I had his money and his wealth. Don't know his Alex from Mars Bar. Yeah, he runs his own WISP for his little village, I think.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Yeah. Now he's using Ubiquiti hardware, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Yep.
And there's another one, which is a big one, and I'm going to just say they suck. Wifinity. Wifinity run they are a wireless ISP. They run a lot of caravan park Wi-Fi, particularly for Part D resorts where my parents have a caravan. And it sucks. They're not using Ubiquiti gear. They're using other stuff, which, I mean, do you know what, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. A WISP, that might not even be a WISP, because I think that's not a WISP. Because they've got an inbound connection to the park, and then it's just a point-to-multi-point deployment around the park. That's not a true WISP, is it?
Not really, no.
That's just a badly done point-to-multi-point. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, what I mean by that is point-to-multi-point, you've got a big, central antenna, which then goes out to a bunch of...
They're called CPEs, so client devices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then they go into, I can tell you for certain, so there's an antenna on my parents' caravan. This is static caravan, by folks. And then inside there's a normal Wi-Fi access point, which is for my parents to use.
Yeah. Fun fact, actually, we're on about bridge mode and router mode earlier. Those antennas, or the receiving antennas, they can actually do different modes, like router mode. They can be in bridge mode themselves. So they've got a lot of features on them, which is quite impressive.
Okay.
So.
Cool. And Jay, you had a question for Alex, I believe.
Yeah. So here I have a monopoly on what ISPs I can do cable wise.
Okay.
So I was looking at a couple options. James thankfully helped me decide to stay with who I have because of the latency. But there are certain instances like Starry Internet, T-Mobile, Verizon. Are those WISPs or are those more multi-point? Because I would have to have a device here to route around my property, but is that WISP or is that multi-point?
So I think what you mean, do you mean like 5G home internet from T-Mobile, that sort of thing?
Yes.
That technically isn't a WISP. That's just the mobile phone or the carriers they're delivering the 4G, 5G connection in a different medium.
Okay, thank you. Because I was curious on that. And like Starry, what I've been told is that they have that might be satellite, but not quite what we think, because they claim they can be like many megabits, like hundreds of megabits up and down is what they claim.
But that's satellite, isn't it? That's more akin to Starlink.
Okay, good. I wanted to ask because I figured some of the people might also have that same question too.
I've not heard of Starry, actually. So
yeah, they're an interesting one I was looking at, but I'm also not allowed to put anything outside my flat to connect stuff. So
I see. Yeah.
Well, because there was one here, I think it was Tele2 or something like that. It was a satellite-based internet decades ago that I looked at for my parents, and that was not an option.
Oh, sorry. Starry Internet isn't satellite. They're a WISP.
Oh, they're
okay.
a WISP. Okay.
I was wondering that because from what you were saying, it sounded like it. I got very confused by how they were providing stuff, but I was told I couldn't put anything on the outside of my flat.
Sorry, Starry Internet, they're doing something really cool. So generally with WISPs, the equipment you uses 5 gigahertz. Starry Internet are using ultra high frequencies to get really fast speed. So they're using the same technology as what I was on about with the mobile phone towers to link each tower together. So what they've done is gone and purchased a lot of licenses, which is actually quite expensive to do for these certain frequencies in certain spaces, and they'll get ultra high speeds to house. That's actually quite interesting.
I was looking at them as in addition to what I'm using now.
Yeah.
Or not in addition,
to replace.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so that brings an interesting question, because my assumption there, that would have been satellite internet, and we know that as good as Starlink is, whatever we think about space, Karen, Starlink is actually pretty good. But Starlink, it doesn't have the best latency, does it? And where do WISPs sit in that sort of, from full fiber to, where do they sit in terms of potential latency issues?
It depends. So I'm talking to you guys over a WISP at the moment, and it's if it's done properly, it's as good as fiber.
Wow. Okay.
So read for that how you will. But
what was interesting about Starry is that it was symmetrical. I was
well, Alex is symmetrical. Alex, what, 50 up, 50 down? I think you said
that's mine. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So actually, it's a shame you can't have that fitted, Ben, because that, without getting too much switching over to internet technologies, folks, a reason that if you're on a cable provider, you're never going to get above maybe, well, I say your upload will always be much, much lower than your download, is because DOCSIS as a technology, it's not designed to be asymmetrical. It's designed to be massively weighted in terms of download, right?
I think so. That's how ADSL works.
Yeah, ADSL is the same. ADSL and VDSL indeed. VDSL is, well, I guess is the correct term XDSL, because like VDSL is just faster ADSL, really, isn't it? Anyway, all right.
Well, I would just point out, we're on the subject. If anyone's interested in using Starry, they've actually gone bankrupt in February. So,
well, there you go, Jay. You can't use them.
I am glad to know that. Okay, I was wondering, they seemed very like they would give you a whole like advanced router and all that. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All righty then. Let's not promote Star. I mean, it's good that we can talk about what they were doing, but maybe that's why they went bankrupt, because they were doing.
It's quite an expensive approach to get actual wireless licenses for each link they're doing, which is that's quite expensive.
Okay. I'm glad I didn't move over to them. Thank you.
And I mean, well, we weren't really going to talk about Starlink, but what I mean, Starlink.
It's very cool, really. The stuff they're doing on boats and airplanes as well. I've used internet on a plane once before recently, and it's rubbish. It's really terrible. So if Starlink comes to airplanes, which they are planning on doing, that'll be game changing. So. Okay.
And one follow up just from The Verge. They are still going to provide internet coverage to new and existing people, but I'm going to stay with what I have for now.
I think if you're looking at an ISP who are having financial trouble, it does lead you to wonder what those cutbacks are going to be in. And let's be honest, when a company's in trouble, the first thing they tend to cut is customer support.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. let's talk, because we talked disaster. I will say, I think, didn't Chris Sherwood go and do some disaster recovery? Was it down in Florida or somewhere recently?
Yeah, the IDDC, or I can't remember exactly what it was called. But that video was incredible.
We'll link that in the show notes, because Chris did a genuine shout out to Chris. Chris, I haven't actually spoken to Chris personally, but I know you have. I know Alex has. And he just seems like one of the nicest guys on the planet.
Like you, I've learned an incredible amount from his videos. I had him on the Creator Spotlight podcast last November. Good episode, really good fun to do. But yeah, it's
awesome. All right, let's talk then, because we talked about disaster recovery. Let's talk about making the most of what you got, because Jay made a really, really good point earlier, which I think is incredibly valid. Not all of us are going to be able to go out and afford to buy a new mesh system. Now, I'll be very honest. I'm going to actually, buy for my sister. I'm going to buy her. I haven't quite decided. I'm torn between. Part of me is thinking I'd just get her the Deco AC1200, because the 1200 is the speed of the total speed of a network, but she's not got the fastest internet connection, so I think 1200 would probably be okay. Or I'm looking at a Mercury Assist, which I've never heard of before, but it's got good reviews, which is AC 1900. And they're both, just to be clear on these, you can get, in the UK, you can get decent mesh Wi-Fi. Okay, it's not going to be the best in terms of performance if you've got a higher speed connection. If you're on like gigabit fiber, you probably want something higher end anyway. For what she's got, we're talking sub £90, sub £80 mesh kits. I think we're brilliant. But if you can't afford that, what can you actually do, Alex? We talked a little bit about channels earlier. What can people do to make the most of the stuff the Wi-Fi gear they've already got? Yeah,
so it's in order to optimize it, you've got to literally understand how the Wi-Fi is physically sort of leaving the device it's coming from the router. So we mentioned earlier about having it behind a TV. So if you can, give the router as much open space as possible, the access point or whatever. So having it behind a TV in a corner, that's a big no-no. Under the stairs, like I mentioned, in newer houses. If you can, just bring it out in the open. Generally, if you've only got one device, so like one router, one access point, try and put it in the middle of the house, because that's going to be the best choice. And yeah, just less obstacles around it as possible. Not really next to a wall, because that will reflect off the wall and cause issues. And just in a good open space if possible. So,
and one thing, look at where your router's placement is. So like Eero.
Yep.
Directly above the Eero does not work as well as out from it, because their antennas are outward based, not upward based.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. So I've got. Well, I can't really show, but the Unify access points, they're like a sort of a UFO shape, and they're designed to be broadcast outward. So if you've got a device that's behind the access point, it's not going to be connecting as well. So with a sort of a access point like that, ceiling or less so, but on the wall, but on a ceiling high up if possible, if you've got that sort of situation. But if you just got one of the routers, just open location, and then also we can talk about channels as well if you want to.
Absolutely. So before we do it, so obviously in that scenario, there are people who have limitations. Mm-hmm. If you've got, for example, your phone. So if we're talking, maybe cable point or whatever, you've only got a certain run of cable.
Yep.
Is it at that point, if it's possible, you should look maybe to run more cable to get it to the other location? I guess, because that's going to be a limiting factor, isn't it? Because look, I know Virgin Media will just install a router next to the TV, and I've seen Virgin Media put them behind TVs, because clearly Virgin Media engineers don't think about Wi-Fi placement.
Yep.
But, you would need to then extend the cable, wouldn't you, where possible?
Yeah, you could. Well, the easiest thing to do is buy a reel of cable that's pre-terminated with Ethernet ends. What I tend to do is buy a reel of cable that's not pre-terminated, run it through walls and then terminate it yourself, which is a little bit tricky. But yeah, if you can buy a reel of cable off Amazon that's a length that you want, that's got the Ethernet ends pre-done, and then move it to a location in the house that's possible. So
I guess I'm more talking about if you're using an ISP provided router, but it's say VDSL or cable, It's not going to be Ethernet that you need to worry about stretching out, is it?
No. So if it's ADSL, you've got the RJ11 cables typically for that sort of situation. You could get a longer reel of that. That's
okay. That's what I was going to ask. So is the distance on my RJ11 cable wouldn't really matter, I guess, to an extent.
I think because it's copper, it's similar to Ethernet, so maybe less than 100 meters.
Okay, right. So we're still talking a very reasonable distance. Right, okay. So RJ11 you could do, and I think coax you could do the same.
I'm not sure, to be honest, but yeah.
No, I'm not. I know. Actually, no, I am sure that you can do that because my parents, the cable point was in the corner, and Virgin Media did, to be fair, run a cable around to the TV because they have to do for the TV box. So maybe, yeah. What about then, Alex? We talked about channels, and we're not talking about TV channels here. We're not talking about BBC One, ITV. We're talking about the chat. Sorry, I had to, or PBS, or no, we're or YouTube channels indeed,
or CW.
Oh gosh, we're talking about the actual. Okay, so maybe help because I don't think we even talked about this within the frequency.
Yep.
So let's take for example 2.4 gigahertz because that's one that tends to be the most crowded.
Yep.
There will be multiple channels and they are just a different. Correct me if I remember, just a different frequency within that 2.4 gigahertz.
Yes, that's correct. So in 2.4 gigahertz, there are 13 channels in the UK. I'm not sure about it in the US, but essentially, so I understand more about the spacing on 5 gigahertz, but yeah, so you got, let's imagine you got 2437 is one of the frequencies, or 2440, so 2.4, and there's a number of channels in that space. If you've got a 20 megahertz channel, what that's essentially meaning is you've got a center frequency and then there's 10 megahertz either side, and that makes up your channel. So in 2.4, it's very small. It's a very small block of frequency. You've only got 3 channels which are not overlapping.
And is it at 1,
6, and 11?
And so then that brings. So say for example, let's say we've got a block of flats. Let's just take a block of flats. It's got two flats on each floor.
Yeah.
And there's 3 floors in total. Am I right that you should sort of be in an ideal world? And you said BT are doing this or trying to do this if everyone's using BT hubs.
Yeah.
You would want to stagger. So you'd maybe go 1, 6, 11. No, hang on. How would you? Yeah, you'd have to figure out.
Yes, you would. Yeah. In an office building. Yeah, in an office building, if you've got a lot of access points, generally with some of the APs, you'd even just turn off 2.4 on some of them.
Right.
Just have with 5 gigahertz, there are a lot more channels available, a lot more frequencies available, and even with 6 gigahertz, there's absolutely tons available. So 5 gigahertz is an easier frequency to plan just because how big it is. I know in the US there aren't many channels available. Some of the restrictions are there's more restrictions basically, but there's a lot of 5 gigahertz frequencies available in the UK. So.
Okay. But I mean, so here's a question, man. Most routers, most Wi-Fi access points, maybe mistake myself there.
Yeah.
Will let you do auto channel selection. Is that a good thing to let it do it itself?
Typically, no. It doesn't do a very good job of doing it. I know even Unify hasn't to date been very good at doing it either. I know with some recent software, if you leave it on auto and then run a RF spectrum scan on the device, it will actually intelligently do it properly now, which is huge revelation after 10 years of Unify. But typically, if you can, plan it yourself if you're in an office building or a large house. But the automatic channel typically doesn't work that well.
So in that scenario we talked about with the flats, I just want to make sure. So in that scenario, you'd want to try and space it so that would you probably end up going, let's say if we went floor, so that's a floor. So you go flat one, channel 1,
yep.
Then 6, then 11, then 6, then 1.
Yes.
Then, yeah. Right?
Yes, right.
Okay. So that so you're not then ending up with you wouldn't go back to the start, so you wouldn't have flat. So if if your number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
yep.
6, you wouldn't end up with flats 1 and say 4,
yep.
both on channel 1. Right?
You wouldn't want that, no. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Okay. And of course, let's be honest. You can't go around to your neighbours. It wouldn't be nice if we could. You can't go around and say, "Hey, neighbour, could you change your Wi-Fi channel?"
Now, can I bring up an interesting thing? Because that Eero does.
Yeah.
So Eero does a channel availability check, and to keep all the devices on a good channel. Well, in the US and Canada, they have a thing called dynamic frequency selection. So depending on how close they are to in use radar signals, there's a spectrum of channels available. I am too close to the airport, unfortunately, which uses these signals. So I can't, my Eero can't, but in certain situations, they can actually open up to a wider range. And this is within our federal
FCC.
Within the FCC rules. But it's an interesting thing Eero has tried to do to find even more channels. So I'm not trying to tangent, but more it's just there's a lot of
So we have that in the UK as well with Ofcom. So Ofcom's our equivalent FCC. DFS has been it's a section of the 5 gigahertz spectrum which is reserved for other uses like weather radar and airplane usage. So when a device is set to a frequency that's within DFS, it has to legally do a pre-check to make sure there's nothing else on that spectrum frequency. And if it can broadcast. If it finds any radar, it has to change. In the UK with WISPs as well, you can use DFS. If you're found to be skirting the rules, you can get fined from Ofcom, which is actually quite serious. You can even go to jail for that. So,
oh yeah, Ofcom. Oh, you don't mess with Ofcom.
No,
in this country, no. I'm sure you don't mess with the FCC either, but we know.
Oh no, yeah, no.
Ofcom is off. Ofcom are pretty, look, for a good reason, pretty strict. Yeah. Right, awesome. And again, I think let's have a look. We've talked about the channel selection. Placement is important.
One thing I want to make note of, especially for mesh. One thing to be careful of is too many mesh network or devices could actually cause overlap. There are certain, you have to have a lot of devices, but there is, I especially on the subreddit for Eero, the official subreddit, sometimes people will go a little too overboard with too many devices. And then they're like, you might not need that many.
That's a very good question to Alex. You can probably speak to this. Like, is that that sounds like a legit concern where if you flood a house with say you've got a 2-bedroom flat and you put 4 mesh points in, that's going to be too much, right? It's
the same with Unify as well. So if it's the same thing. I think with the Eero subreddit, maybe people are discovering some of this wireless thing, wireless information has been out for quite a while, but it's more about flooding the area with too many 5 gigahertz channels, and also if you've got too many Wi-Fi access points in a certain area, and so imagine your phone is in the hallway and there's one in one bedroom, one over there, and your phone's seeing 2 BSSIDs with the same signal level. It's going to be jumping around all the time. So you'll have to be quite careful of that as well.
And the roaming is not without, there will be a slight lag when you roam, right? By very nature, but you're switching access points.
Yeah, there is so within iOS, I know there's a threshold of minus 65 dBm. At that threshold, it will start looking for other neighbors. So yeah, that's a genuine thing. So yeah.
Okay. A lot of these mesh manufacturers will say in the packaging, like the specs, like 4, maybe 2 to 3 bedrooms, 4 to 5. And that tends to correlate to the number of APs, the number of access points that you buy at one time. So like, I'm thinking for my sister's place, which is a 2-bedroom, relatively small, like area-wise house. I'm thinking 2 mesh points, one in the lounge, near, like in an open space near to the router.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have to use her router and put it into, I think we're going to have to just put these into access point mode because it's a Sky router. Until they get full fiber, they're going to have to be in access point mode. One there, and then probably one in my nephew's room. Probably is my thinking.
So one thing to remember with Wi-Fi planning and that sort of thing, there is never a rule of thumb for any of it. It always depends on the environment. So what I tend to do is do some tests with a so I think on Android there's some Wi-Fi scanner apps. So what I use is the Wi-Fi Man app on iOS from Ubiquiti, and actually just walk around the room and scan make sure where you are there's a good signal level, because you might find that you might get away with 2 or 3. So I helped a friend 3 or 4 years ago now. It's a relatively large house, like 2 or 3 bedrooms. But I was like, we probably need 3 Unify APs. We put 1 in the kitchen and the whole house was covered. I was like, okay.
Oh, wow.
So it does depend on the environment and where it is and that sort of thing. So
because as you said earlier, every house is, you talked rightly about, different materials. If you've got a big old like Yorkshire stone property, absolutely you're going to need more APs. And in fact, in those sort of properties, you probably want to consider, if you can, you probably want to consider trying to do some form of Ethernet backhaul in those properties.
Yes. Yeah.
Listen, I think that covers everything. Oh, there's one thing I was going to just quickly actually say. I don't know if maybe it's too technical for this episode, but Mumimo, multi-user, multiple input, multiple outputs. Is that something that people need to even think about, or is it just something that's in good routers now and it's just a thing? So good access points, sorry.
Yeah, for everyone, I think for the general average user, you probably don't need to worry about it. Did notice actually with older Intel Macs, with MIMO, it can basically transmit, receive multiple things at the same time. So imagine it like three. Yeah, so if you're downloading a file, your computer or phone supports 2 or 3 channels at the same time, or lanes at the same time. It is essentially like having 3 roads or 3 pipes of traffic coming into your device, and sort of being saturated with data essentially. So I remember on older Intel Macs, they actually supported 3x3 MIMO, which was huge at the time. And now with the M1 stuff, it now maxes out at 2x2, which is a bit weird. I think for the average user, it's probably something you don't really need to worry about that much. I think it's more of an on-paper spec versus this is going to make a huge difference.
And one final question for you, because I'm very conscious of time. These, so look, these, I want to be careful here because I don't want to upset any manufacturers or anything. Right. Gaming routers, like the stupidly powerful Nighthawks and things like that. Do they serve a purpose, or is it about pushing the bandwidth out? I guess, does it depend on what your internet connection is as well, to an extent? Like how fast?
It does. I think with the game routers, they're a bit overhyped. I think what they're doing software-wise is more of QoS, some automatic QoS features, which make a better difference. To be honest, I think something like, in terms of, I'm a little bit biased, but I think something like a UDR would be better than a Netgear Nighthawk, really.
That would be my thought too, because so quality of service, just to clarify for people, QoS, quality of service, now Alex, correct me if I get this wrong, please. It basically looks at all the traffic and says, okay, let's try and prioritize this traffic, and let's try and make sure that no one device can utilize all of the bandwidth and effectively hog all of the bandwidth. It tries to treat network traffic fairly. Is that a good summary of QoS?
Yeah, so think of network traffic like a pipe. So if someone's that pipe's full, basically, anything else you try and shove through it is going to take longer and longer and longer. So imagine if you've got 50 meg down, you're downloading something that's maxing it out completely, you ping something on the internet or try and do something else, it's incredibly slow. So what QoS is doing is saying this pipe can only go to 80%, and then that 20% at the top is still free, which means something like phone calls and video calls or podcast recordings, whatever, they still will go through okay on that top 20% because there's still some room free for things that are small to go through fine. So I'm looking at the specs on these Netgear routers, the Nighthawk ones. They've got very low specs, really. I mean, they've got 256 megs of RAM. Yours UDR's got 2 or 3 gigs of RAM.
Wow.
They haven't really bumped up the Ethernet port speed to 2.5 gig, which would be my first thought they'd do. Personally, I haven't used one, but I don't think they can possibly do much with one little device than a UDR could do. So I mean, yeah. Look, my experience with UDR. Look, let's be the UDR, the Unify app. I'd be able to do stuff to help our streams by making sure that if Backblaze does run when it's not meant to, because I've got Backblaze set on a schedule at network level, I've throttled. I've speed restricted Backblaze traffic. I've speed restricted the guest network. Because, by the way, guest networks, are they taking up another SSID? Are they on a different channel? Or is it just, are they the same BSSID, but just a different SSID? That's a good, I meant to suggest this earlier. Common misconception is, imagine if you do a Wi-Fi scan, and you see a bunch of different SSIDs, but they're all virtual SSIDs. So if you've got Unify IP or UDR, and you've got, I don't know, 6 or 7 SSIDs, someone looking at that's going to think, oh God, there's so much interference everywhere. But no, it is not more interference. It's just a virtual SSID. When you mention BSSID, it's actually a different BSSID, but it's not making any more interference. That's the general consensus of that.
Okay, so it's still using the same radio channel, so it's not like because it's still one radio in the device. Yeah. And on the case of like something, so I'm assuming that guest networks on these access points, in an ideal world, should, and I know it's not the case on every route, on every access point, every router, they should be a separate VLAN with firewall rules, but I don't think every
they in my experience they never are. There's nothing special they're doing.
I do know Eero's a guest network. I know some of these things like the Amazon Sidewalk is a VLAN. It uses the bandwidth of your, but it only talks with other. It's a network that talks with other Amazon devices, other Ring devices.
Which I don't like. I really don't like that idea. I struggle with that.
It does remind me of like the of one thing that I know Spectrum here does, and it kind of a Spectrum you have the option of on their Wi-Fi router creating a guest network that any other Spectrum users could connect to.
Yeah, and
use your bandwidth, and you could use any of their bandwidth. It's kind of, I remember years ago, this company was giving out free Wi-Fi routers, and the stipulation was you then created a VLAN.
Was it FON?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
FON. Well, FON. Didn't BT deploy FON for a while, baked into their home hubs, Alex?
They still are, but it's not called FON anymore. It's just BT Wi-Fi, which I find incredibly useful.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm just being maybe. Okay, go on, because I'd like to know. Yeah, I think I know why you'd find it useful. My concern is what's to stop that hogging all my bandwidth. Is my
I don't know. Really, there's no information at a technical level what it's doing. I haven't checked if it's a separate IP range. I'd imagine, I'd hope that it would be. I haven't checked the speed of them. Generally, they're not. I would imagine they're probably capped at whatever speed, possibly. You'd hope. But I find them useful in public spaces. So sometimes where you go, coffee shop or some sort of place to use a phone or a laptop, whatever. The place isn't offering Wi-Fi. It was more of a thing 5 or 6 years ago. Wi-Fi has become more of a common commodity now, thankfully.
Yeah, because isn't there a movement for, is it open wireless? And the idea is that you set up a SSID with that name. I think you put a password on it and you just let anyone use it. Now, of course, on good Wi-Fi gear like the Ubiquiti UDR, you can VLAN that off, and you can, because I can on a good setup. So my work Wi-Fi, for example, the Wi-Fi I've set up for my work devices is capped at a certain threshold. But it is completely isolated. There's on its own VLAN. Again, firewall rules to stop any work traffic getting. Yeah, am I making sense?
Yeah, this is from if you go to.
It's EFF, isn't it? Yeah,
that's what I found. Yeah,
EFF, and it's dozens of open networks are available at your. There are two. Just so everybody knows, there's an open wireless company that sells you wireless, but this one's open. That the goal is. Dozens of open networks are available. Tablets, watches can automatically join their networks. Nifty things. I do say, because I was listening to a podcast about Sidewalk, about even Apple's AirTag system. There is a concern now. If a lot of your systems are creating these networks, are you siphoning off bandwidth here and there to all these networks? And I mean, I think that is a very valid concern. The more bandwidth we're siphoning out to everybody, are we still keeping it for ourselves? And I think that is a very good concern, because one network siphoning off a little bit here is not bad, but you have all these devices. That's where it becomes a huge concern.
Yes. I mean, look, from my point of view, I would absolutely set up openwireless.org, give it maybe 10 up, 10 down. Well, I would, at the moment, I would give it 10 down, and maybe give it 10 up, maybe 10 down, 2 up, maybe, as a way for people to get access. And I would filter the heck out of it. I would put it through Ubiquiti's ad blocker. I would, because the UDR has, guess what, folks? It's got content filtering. So this is sounding like an advert for Ubiquiti UDR, but I mean, let's be honest, Alex, you tested this thing out. Now, you've got a full-on Ubiquiti network at home.
Yeah.
You would use it, Miss was from, in fact, where it's it's behind me. You were using this, and it is a great little device. And at the price point of £200,
the price point is good. Yeah.
It was even better when it was in the EA. I was like, oh, please let that be the actual price. Please let that be the actual price.
I know.
No, it wasn't. No. Anyway, look, we should probably wrap up. Alex, from you, is there any closing thoughts that people should be aware of with Wi-Fi and, and wireless in general?
Well, definitely. There's a lot of things there's a lot of things you can learn about Wi-Fi. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things a long time ago that you could read scary things about Wi-Fi. None of it's really true. It's something to be, you can get a lot of benefit from using Wi-Fi in the house or the home, the workplace as well. It's been good to talk to you both about the ins and outs of technical details about Wi-Fi and all the different use cases it's got. It's got a lot of use cases, from natural disasters to WISPs to bringing internet to rural areas. So yeah, it's a good time.
Look, it's a lot. Wi-Fi has changed the way we use technology. Gone are the days when you would be tethered to a computer with 56k modem. The fact that I can sit anywhere around my flat and edit this very podcast and then upload it or send the files off to the NAS, be doing video calls with Jae, or in fact, now look, we're all hardwired in. We're all on Ethernet, but at the same time, we actually could use Wi-Fi to do what we do. I do FaceTime Wi-Fi calls all the time, and it works. So Wi-Fi is a wonderful thing. I really hope this episode has been useful for people, and this is absolutely one. Look, obviously, Alex, if people drop us comments or stuff in the Discord, we can pass on any questions and see if you can jump in and answer. Awesome.
Any questions,
so folks. Awesome. So, folks, come over to our Discord, crosswires.net/Discord. We will have a specific... in fact, Jake, can we do a link to the actual forum post if people are already on the Discord? Yeah.
For anybody who's already joined the Discord, absolutely.
Okay. So, join our Discord, crosswires.net.Discord, and then in the show notes, or if you're already on the server, just follow the link. It'll take you straight to a forum post. Drop us an email to podcast@crosswires.net. And look, engage with us on Mastodon. Honestly, we'd love to hear your experiences. Maybe you've got some Wi-Fi horror stories. Look,
I've got some stuff I haven't shared.
Oh, I know. Well, you could, and I'm sure Alex has got loads of horror stories of deployments and stuff. And I bet, our friends like Chris and Cody and Tom have seen some weird and wonderful deployments. I mean, to be fair, I'm sure, Tom, as the man who's seen an SSD hot glued into an M.2 slot, has probably seen far worse in the networking world.
I will say one thing I like. I love modern phones where you can now share Wi-Fi passwords much easier.
Oh, that's
consent,
cool.
Obviously.
Well, the iCloud. I will say this: iCloud, the whole iCloud keychain, and be able to, share the Wi. If you're joined to a Wi-Fi network and your friend comes along on an iPhone and joins that network, just the ability to share that password is so cool.
Actually, because I think when I visited you, James, that was the first thing you shared with me was the Wi-Fi. Absolutely. And Jay's on the primary network, but guest network. Anyway, let's wrap this up. Alex, thank you so much as always. It's feeling like you're becoming part of the team, because we have you on so often. It's very weird not recording with you for charging statements. That's all good. Alex, where can people find all your amazing content?
Cool. So for news, reviews, and different tech guides about anything, have a look at theinterface.uk. We're also on Twitter and Mastodon as well. You can find out all the content I make for Hostify as well, hostify.com. You can find the blogs, support guides, and YouTube videos as well. That's what I'm doing day to day. And also, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. And we'll link Alex's actual first appearance on the show, because Alex came on to talk about Hostify way back when. So a nice little circle of it. We've now gone home grade routing stuff. And of course, as we said, business networking, office Wi-Fi is a whole different game. And we probably should try and bribe Cody to come back on the show sometime to talk about the latest in Unify. I'd love to get you two together actually to talk the latest in Unify gear. So
that'd be quite cool.
That could be a long episode. Jay, thank you so much for all your wonderful questions and for being my amazing co-host. Let's roll that outro. Thanks for listening to this episode of Crosswires. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please drop us a note over to podcast@crosswires.net.
You can also drop us a comment on the post, or if you're a GoodPod user, why not start a discussion there too?
You can also join our new Discord server at crosswires.net/Discord. We've got forum channels for each episode, and we'd love you to join the discussion there.
You can also follow us on Mastodon at Crosswires at mastodon.social.
And of course, you can find the show in all the good podcast apps, and all the really bad ones too.
More of our content, head on over to crosswires.net/YouTube for all our videos, and keep an eye on our Twitch channel at crosswires.net/live for our upcoming streams.
If you like what you heard, please do drop a review in your podcast directory of choice. It really does help spread the word about the show.
And of course, if you can spare even the smallest amount of financial support, we'd be incredibly grateful. You can support us at ko-fi.com/crosswires. That is ko-fi.com/crosswires.
Until next time, thanks for listening.